Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming to this week's edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Tanya Schrum, and we are joined by our California local journalism fellow, Kelby McIntosh, and our illustrious arts and features editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome to you both, and welcome back, Kelby.
Thank you.
It's always good to see you, Tanya.
Always a pleasure, and I am very excited for what we have coming to this week's edition of the North Coast Journal. Kelby, would you like to fill us in on the cover story?
Yeah, so our cover story for this issue of the journal is done by Kim Weir, our digital editor, and it's the culling of barred owls, which, it's a grim topic, but according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, it's something that's very needed. And because the barred owl is a invasive species, they're doing this culling to protect essentially their northern cousin, the spotted owl. It's because they're in high competitive with their cousin. They share the same territories, same food sources. It's preventing the northern spotted owl from reproducing, excuse me. And so I just want y'all to know this is not a public hunting announcement for the barred owl. This is actually for specific groups, state and federal agencies, as well as some local tribes and specific landowners who are coming in from Washington into California to participate in this services. Though it is considered a very controversial approach, this is based on a study that's been done for more than a decade ago. But that study, though conducted some in Humboldt, has been shown results that has improved the numbers of the northern spotted owl. Robin Brown from the Fishing and Wildlife Department has been the lead on this program. But I think one of the very interesting things that she stated is that this type of management alone, territorial management alone, won't actually save the spotted owls because the barred owl can outcompete them in other ways. And so, though this has happened, that's one of the biggest points that I found interesting from the article. But some context from this is that a maximum around 450,000 barred owls would be removed over the course of 30 years. And that's roughly 15,000 owls a year. Those numbers alone are astronomical to understand this type of culling that will be happening. And even then, through Kim's research, she also got in touch with some of the local tribes who said they removed, specifically Hoopa, who removed 800 owls from their property.
So they really feel that this is necessary, even though obviously we're all aware that restoration of their habitat has been mostly at the forefront in the past, correct?
Yes, correct. It's because of the growing numbers and how it's impacting the spotted owls' needs of thriving is why this program has been taking into place more so than anything else. And when you look at the numbers through Kim's research, it really shows how much it shows how invasive the barred owl has been towards the northern spotted owl more than anything else.
Yeah, I saw in one part of the story, she refers to them as larger, brasher, and more prolific breeders. And that's a wild cousin to have. And I guess when Tanya mentioned the efforts to, give owls more room, to help them have more food, et cetera, if you've got the larger, brasher, more prolific breeder cousin in your neighborhood, then I guess at this point, it's not enough to just try and give them more space or to save room from logging and things like that.
Hopefully and through vocalization of not only the Fisheries and Wildlife Department, the strategy offers the opportunity for the spotted owls to have a chance of survival. They've been on the endangered species list since the 90s, and which is just so wild to think about. And just up until this point, they're still struggling to develop numbers. This is why the Fishing and Wildlife Department has taken such a strong take, despite the detractors that have vocalized the negatives towards this program.
Yeah, it's not fun to think about people having to go out and essentially shoot owls. When we talk about culling and we talk about reducing numbers or taking, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people having to go out and shoot the owls.
At least with this process, they have taken all factors into consideration before they did settle on shooting as the culling method kind of thing. And even before we got onto this call, we talked about the processes of culling for different species and animals that before this hand. So it shows the importance of protecting a species like the spotted owl, despite the methods of which they're undergoing to protect the spotted owl.
Well, and one thing I will say I really appreciated in the article is that it was brought up that they're going to make sure that it is that they're lethally taken out, that no injured animals are left to suffer, and if so, they will contact wildlife management to assist. I mean, it definitely sounds like they're making the best of a very bad situation.
It is very encouraging, and I'm glad that you brought that point up, just because it shows the importance of how they are trying to really tiptoe this line of preserving both the northern spotted owl, as well as making sure that in this process they are taking into the ethics of how the barred owl is treated.
It's definitely not a cheery story. I know that we're beginning kind of on that note. It would be wonderful to see the effects actually show promise, and that we would improve the numbers. And there was a mention that in places where this was used, they did see an improvement in the spotted owl numbers, correct?
Yes, they did see an improvement in the numbers. So despite it being a grim process, it yields results. Hopefully in the future, when it comes to these things, we can find alternatives towards the method when it comes to preserving endangered species and culling. But yeah, this is just the direction that they're headed for, particularly this process more than anything else.
A sad story, Tanya.
I know it's a difficult one, and I mean, who doesn't love an owl? I mean, who indeed? So it's definitely a difficult line to walk. We obviously want to preserve our native species, but we don't necessarily want to do it with bloodshed. So hopefully other methods of preservation of the spotted owls can maybe come into fruition, and this can take a step back. But right now, this is what we have, and I don't envy that task, because they definitely don't seem like, woohoo, we're gonna be kicking some owls,
Yeah, I don't think that's why anybody gets into environmental protection, right?
Absolutely.
It's not exactly.
All right. Well, before we pivot, do you have any final thoughts about this story you'd like to share, Kelby?
As said, it's not the brightest ray of sunshine stories that we've produced out here on the journal. But I hope that any of our watchers understand the reasons and the purposes. And only thing I can say is I hope when it comes to these processes, we find alternative methods.
I really appreciate that. And thank you for bringing Kim Weir's story to us, Kelby. And with that, we're going to pivot over to some fun and tasty goodness with Jennifer.
I think I owe Kim a night out eating, actually. So this week we have a comeback of a different kind, which is Taste of Mainstreet. Those of you who recall life before COVID maybe remember that we used to do something called Taste of Mainstreet, which is a kind of a, I don't know, it's not exactly a food festival. It's not like Oyster Fest, but it was a way for people to sample food from local restaurants. And you buy a ticket and you get a little map of Old Town with little restaurants marked off, and you plan your attack on the town, and then you run around trying samples at, could be, I remember it used to be somewhere upwards of around 24 places. It is back. We haven't had it since 2019, but it's back. And it went back to its usual time, which is a kickoff before the Redwood Coast Music Festival. That would be a different night. But the Redwood Coast Music Festival was kind of the impetus for it back in the day. And it was a way to, while lots of out-of-towners were here visiting Eureka and going to different shows around town, offering samples from different restaurants so that they could get interested, sample, stay for dinner, etc. And even though it was geared towards out-of-towners, it became a local favorite. And let me tell you, I have done some marathon run-throughs. I have speed run Taste of Mainstreet in the past when I was, because I'm working. Everybody else is having fun and I'm working, and like, it's still fun. But I remember I was talking to the ladies that I ran around with this year. The late Sam Armanino was my photographer one year, and I dragged that boy up and down these streets, and he was like trying to put a slider in his mouth while I was like, come on, dragging him across an intersection. But with the smaller number, 14 participating restaurants, it was not such a stretch. And it was actually very cool. And I really am very pleased with the comeback, partly because, well, I talked to Amanda Kruschke of formerly of Eureka Mainstreet, and now she's a development coordinator. She runs lots of events and stuff. If you're wondering who's pulling her hair out during the 4th of July planning, that would be Amanda Kruschke. I got to talk to her about it, and she was saying that, the fact that it's become a local thing does not change the wonderful kind of opportunity to get people trying new places or trying old places that they haven't been before, and also spending a little money downtown. It might not be something where, during, say, a festival or, during a Arts Alive where people spend money that night, but it might drive people to spend money downtown in the future. So I talked to a couple of people who participated, among them, Kirk Radomski, who is the owner of the fairly new Captain's Quarters. You might recall the local cider bar and Humboldt Cider Company tap room that is in Old Town has now transformed. He actually used to work there, and now he and his wife run the Captain's Quarters, which is a New Orleans themed beer bar with a performance space. And he's told me that he's planning lots of small gigs and stuff, although they do have a Tuesday karaoke night. See you there. I see Tanya going, really?
Always love karaoke.
Yeah, and they were giving out these adorable little slushies, hurricane slushies or root beer slushies that were non-alcoholic. And, you'd get your stamp card punched and you get your tiny slushie. And I talked to him about it, and he was saying that the outlay for giving out all those samples really paid off for him, because it's a new place and it's a bit out of the way. They don't get a ton of foot traffic there, but he saw 200-300 people come in who would not have even maybe known they were there, and they tried something that isn't available elsewhere. Where else are you getting a hurricane slushie in Humboldt? My DMs are open. Yeah, so it was really worth it to him. The same thing, I talked to Kelly Beligante over at Familia Cafe, and she was saying that it was the same over there. They just made more of what they usually have, right? You're not making something necessarily special because you want people to try your usual wares. So they had a lot of good stuff. They had cookies, they had cafe miel. They make this coffee with honey in it that's very nice. And they had vegan cheesecake, which, hey, vegans, cheesecake is back for you. And honestly, I know you're skeptical. You're right to be skeptical because so often it's bad, but it's quite good. And she said the same thing. People came in who were like, oh, I thought you just had coffee. And they saw the menu, they saw all the things that they have. And she felt like there were a lot of new faces. Likewise, the folks over at Sweet Greens Juice Bar, this is something. It's over next door to the Ritz in Old Town. And now that the Ritz is closed, and there's 2 more shops there that are closed, and the Cal Poly Humboldt kind of swag store is going to be relocating. You know, I talked to one of the owners over there, and she was telling me that, yeah, they're going to be like the only shop on that little run, that block, straight ahead block. You know, Madrone is around the corner. They were giving out pizza bagels, but on their little street front there, they're going to be the only shop. And she was saying that, you know, cuts down on foot traffic, etc. And there were a lot of people that came in because she said they were utterly slammed, handing out tiny acai bowls. That a lot of people did not know they were there, had never tried their stuff, or maybe there are people who don't typically go into a juice bar because they're like green blended vegetables, but they tried something sweet and nice and crunchy and interesting. And she said that since that evening, they've seen new faces in the shop who were like, hey, we were here for the other night and we're back for something else. So it is kind of the best you could hope for. When it comes to restaurants that have changed hands, like Surfside Burger Shack has changed hands a couple of times, you are, again, trying to reestablish your customer base. New places like Guatemalan Yum Yums, where they were hustling, just moving all kinds of like chichitos and like pupusas and all this stuff. They were moving out. It was like a frantic party hostess. This woman was coming out with tray after tray and they were just vanishing. Did I stop and get an extra pupusa? I did, because you can't just have a little piece of pupusa and go on with your night. No, I had to get one. Thank you to the ladies who were with me for your patience. But yeah, there are all kinds of opportunities to try new things. I know a lot of people haven't been over to Walk In, Walk Out, which is over where the Green Lily used to be in Old Town. And by the time I got there, they were out of everything. I'm not mad. I work here. I can go whenever I want. But it's kind of a cool thing to see how much traffic they got and how much interest there was. They sold about 300 tickets, and everybody's trying to go to every spot so that you can be entered in a raffle. So it really drummed up a lot of interest, and I was happy to see it working out for local restaurants and for the people who are participating, because it is a very social night, and you know, it's fun to walk and sample.
It's amazing, and I'm so glad it's back, and it's going to hopefully increase revenue for all those struggling new and returning restaurants.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. Thank you, Jennifer. And with that, we're going to round out the show with another amazing piece by Jennifer Fumiko Cahill, this time talking about a possible intervention. And did you know that Darth Vader is actually kind of woke?
So, listen, he has issues with his kids. I get it. Not a great dad. So this week for Seriously, we do have an editorial about Measure F in the front of the book, if you open up the paper. And in that, Fed runs down all of the very important and serious points regarding Measure F. So those of you in Eureka who are voting on it, I strongly recommend you read that. On the other hand, I think we all know that my strong point is snarky little comments. So I have a Seriously column this week in which the Rob Arkley involvement in Measure F is the subject. And in it, a handful of other villains, actual villains, like super villains, like the Joker and the evil Maleficent and James Bond villain Goldfinger and Darth Vader, all kind of get together, and they're just concerned about Rob because this feels very small time, very petty. And if you're going to do villain stuff, they just want to see him thrive. You know what I mean? They want to go back to the days when he was throwing around dark money to conservative campaigns, and back when he was, wooing Supreme Court judges by paying for vacations and stuff. But fighting over parking lots feels unglamorous. So I sort of imagined what these villains would say to him. I think it's probably troubling how much I enjoy being in villain headspace myself. Pot kettle. But anyway, it's kind of talking about how the Measure F campaign, which Rob Arkley has put about 1.2 million into through his company, is very sort of embarrassingly dishonest. And who is the enemy here? Because it feels like the arch nemesis might be the homeless. And it's just not a good look even for a villain. You want to be going up against Batman. You want to be fighting, the league of something, and it can't be women voters. It's got to be a real fight, but it's feeling very small time.
Small potatoes.
Small potatoes.
He needs to get back to I'm not even gonna spoil the button. The button joke is definitely one of the best.
Thank you. I have long wondered why he's so obsessed with Eureka. Eureka's like, why are you obsessed with me? Like, honestly, if I had Rob Arkley's money, I would be doing mischief on a different scale in a different place. I don't know. Is he unleashing barred owls? It's hard to say.
Well, let's hope he finds a hobby. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up this week. The current edition of the North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick it up. Read the serious column. Get all the jokes. You can also, of course, find it online at northcoastjournal.com. I am Tanya Schrum. Thanks for being with us and staying informed and supportive of our North Coast community.